Hey everyone, I'm Ryan. You're watching a 60 Cycle Hum, and in this video I'm going to compare the Strymon Iridium, their little amp and cab simulator box loaded with impulse responses and whatnot, to the Line6 HX Stomp. I'm going to be doing the Fender Deluxe Reverb setting on both of them. You can see the amp is up on the round setting there, and I've got the US Deluxe Vibe selected on here. I thought the Vibe sounded closer than the Deluxe Normal on the HX Stomp to what the Iridium does. Some unique routing stuff I'm doing here. I'm running the Iridium through the loop of the HX Stomp. You can see the little purple square, the little green, bluish, teal square there is the loop. I'm using snapshots to go back and forth. I've also got the cab side of the Iridium disabled. You can see the light is amber there, indicating that the cab is disabled. And I'm going to be running both of these through the same impulse response hosted on the HX Stomp. So we're really only hearing the amp side of the Iridium against an amp sim on the HX Stomp. So let's get into it. But by the way, I am recording direct into my HX field recorder here. Here is the Line6. And here is the Iridium. Back to the Stomp. Iridium. Let's do some neck pickup work with my Jennings Navigator here. Stomp. Iridium. Obviously, there's all kinds of different ways you can dial in the Stomp. I mean, the HX Stomp is an incredible pedal in that you can do pretty much anything with it. It is a Swiss Army knife that does a great job of doing lots of stuff. Effects, amps, cab sims, EQs, routing stuff. I'm routing, I've got this in the loop of it to control where it is in the mix and all sorts of fun stuff. I think the HX Stomp is a brilliant value for what they charge for this thing. I think they're like $600 or something like that. Enter the Iridium, which is just tightly focused on amp and cab sounds. It is not a do-it-all box like the HX Stomp. That should be obvious to anyone. To me, these boxes aren't direct competitors, and I think it's funny that everyone is calling out for these comparisons and trying to decide which or the other. I could see, people using this exclusively as an amp and cab box. It makes sense. That's how I use it. But it does so much other stuff. I feel like the comparison kind of falls apart. As far as sound comparisons, I've tried my best to dial in this amp to sound as close as I could to the Iridium. I've tried to dial in the Iridium as close as I could to this amp, and then I went back and forth for a couple hours yesterday and today and found some compromises. People who think that it's just going to be the same sound with the same models or whatever, and then if you run them through the same impulse response, it's going to be the same sort of thing, are wrong. I mean, there's a character to this that's different from the character in this. I'm sure I could get creative with this, and I could do stereo amps that sum back to mono that get much closer to the sound of this, spending a lot of time building, patches and whatnot. I'm sure I could do tweaking on this to get it closer to the sound that this makes. That's really not the point. That's really not the point. I mean, I think functionally the big difference between the Iridium and the HX Stomp is that this is all just right up in front for you. It's for people who want to easily and quickly dial in like some really true to amp sounds. Like when I use this live, I really get the feeling like I've got my Princeton reverb in an ISO box somewhere. When you use the HX Stomp, this is a tweaker's dream. Like you sit down for hours and you build custom patches. Once you learn how to use it, it's fairly easy to get into submenus and tweak things on the fly to dial in to your band mix and whatnot. But this is more about like getting crazy creative, building patches, getting weird and stuff like that. All right, let's talk about the tone of these two. Here is the Stomp again. The Iridium. A challenge I've had with the Stomp is that it's a little tricky to dial in the clean tones that I like. You can see that the drive on this US Deluxe Vibe amp model here is at 2.6. I've got the drive on the Iridium right at 50%, right in the middle, and I've still got clean headroom here, but the Stomp is breaking up and getting crispy. It's also got a bit of like a chime, like mid-scooped sparkle thing going on. Where the Iridium is more of like a mid-pushed, barky sort of sound. And I can dial it into more of a blackface sound by shifting the middle. But it still has this mid-humped bark to it. Keep in mind that I'm running both of these through the same impulse response on the HX Stomp. This isn't even the impulse response stored in the Iridium. There's just a complete character difference between the two, even though they're modeling the same amplifier. They have some sort of special technology or way of making impulse responses for the amp side in this. I forget what they call it, some sort of proprietary thing. I'm sure they have their own proprietary way of doing things at Line6, and they came up with different results. I think both results are useful. I think both results could mean different things to different people. I tend to favor for live use the Iridium right now, but there's still a ton of stuff I'd like to do in the HX Stomp. Let me make sure I'm saving my patch here. Let's go to the patch that I use for church to see how that compares. I think it's all the way back here somewhere. All right, this is my flat like amp sound that I run pedals into at church. You can hear it's kind of more similar to what I do on the Iridium. This is a little bit hot. Turn that down. Kind of more of a flat mid response with a bit of a mid push to it, but still pretty Fendery. It's pretty close to what I do here. It just has a little bit more of a mid-scoop sparkle to it. And let's go back to that deluxe preset I made. Go back to snapshots here. And the way I made that patch that I use at church, gotta turn this back up, is that I've actually got 2 amps and 2 cabs running parallel to each other and then summing back into mono. And creative stuff like that is where the HX Stomp really shines, in my opinion. I mean, use your own ears, make your own decisions, figure out which works best for you. I mean, maybe both. Having this thing in the loop of this is honestly pretty brilliant. I could do a lot with just these two together. Like, this is like a pedal board ender where, like, oh, I've got everything I need in 2 pedals easily. Porque no los dos is what I'm saying. All right, let's try some other fun stuff. I have got a tube screamer here with a Keeley Mod Plus mod on here. I put a sticker, a piece of tape to remind me. So let's see what this sounds like pushing each situation here. This is the Iridium with the tube screamer. You'll notice I've got the volume pretty dang high on there. And here is the Strymon. No big surprises there. The Strymon is more mid-pushed, more kind of like filtered sounding. To me, that's the sound I would expect to be running that tube screamer into my Princeton with like a condenser mic on it. The Stomp is more of like a modeling sound to me. There's something about it that sounds like it's been run through a bunch of software and been mastered for a finished track. It doesn't sound like an actual amp with a mic on it. It sounds like an amp that was mic'd and then run through a bunch of processing to make it fit into a mix. Like that's kind of my reaction and impression to a pedal hitting the HX Stomp. Both sounds are totally fine and totally acceptable. It really depends on what you need. I'm going to keep saying that over and over again because it's true. Let's try it on a lower gain setting. Let's try pushing that mid up into tweed territory. Going back to talking about kind of the sound differences between the HX Stomp and the Iridium is I've really noticed that the low end on the HX Stomp doesn't sound like low end that comes from an amp. It sounds more like I was saying, like a studio mix where it's more like a low end that would come from a stereo. I don't know quite how to explain that, but I mean, maybe the lows that I'm getting from the Iridium are more like mid lows, like that barky amp style low, where this is more like low end you would feel in a finished song. Does that make any sense? Is anyone else experiencing that? That's just kind of my take on it. Let's swap in a different pedal. I want to try hitting these with boosts. I've got the Tysco boost here. It turns on. Awesome. All right. I am going to put it on the 24 volt setting on the normal boost. You know, flat. We're going to put it on flat boost. And then I'm just going to start turning it up and seeing what each thing does. Gain at middle on the boost. Level is all the way down right now, and I'm just going to slowly turn it up. You know, I should have this thing. Will it sit right here? I didn't think this out. This is on the Iridium. I think that sounds pretty good. Let's do a big chord. Let's take the gain back to noon and the level all the way down. Go to the HX Stomp. I think the Iridium wins on this one. It just turns pretty woofy, and the low end doesn't sound like an amp low end on the HX Stomp, where the Iridium really does, to me, it sounds like an amp that's been hit with a big boost. Yeah, the HX Stomp just kind of falls apart a bit with that boost. I'm not a fan of how it reacts to that. In fact, when I run the HX Stomp in a band mix live, I tend to program a boost into it to be after it, and then I would do gain changes to simulate the boost. I wouldn't use a boost pedal in front of the HX Stomp to do gain boosting. You know what I mean? Where with the Iridium, after this test, I haven't done this before. I didn't run boost before this either time that I've used it live. I'm really happy with how that reacted, honestly. Let's try a fuzz now. I'm going to do the Contraband by Walrus because it's just so super simple. An output knob and a thin and a thick switch. There's not much here to mess up as far as settings and whatnot. That's the Iridium. Here's the Contraband. To the thin side. And here is the HX Stomp. Let's try pulling the mids on the Iridium, to be fair. To be fair. I don't know, guys. I think the Iridium is doing it for me. Some people might think the Iridium is too muddy or too mid-focused in this sort of setting. I'm only using... What the heck? I'm only using the Fender setting on here. The Vox settings will do all sorts of different stuff. The Marshall settings will do all sorts of different stuff. You can get infinitely creative with the HX Stomp, combining amps and cabs, all sorts of different amps and cabs in here. Of course, I could, spend a day building some sort of custom patch in here that would probably get me way closer to the sound of this and get past that, brighter, more mid-scoop sound that I'm getting from this patch. And you can see that my mids are up on this right now. The mids are at 7.3, low end is at 4.6. Treble is at 3.4. So I'm actually mid-pushing this patch, and it still sounds scooped. You decide what you want. I'm going to keep them both. I'm not going to be one of these people that are like, I'm going to sell one to get the other and keep the other. I fully see myself using these both on my live board at the same time to do different things. Maybe even use the Iridium with the cab side off and load a bunch of preset cabs, different cab patches on the HX Stomp, and swap cabs willy-nilly. Do all my effects and stuff on here, include this in the loop of the HX Stomp. Both of them do stereo. Right now I'm running mono out of the HX Stomp into the Iridium, which is then running its stereo out, which I didn't really need to do because I'm not running the cabs, and the cabs are the part that are stereo. But, you can see that opens up all kinds of options. I could run stereo effects through this, into the Iridium, back into the HX Stomp, out the output, direct into the front of the house. Both of these are powerful boxes that make really great sounds. And I think we just need to stop pretending that they need a fight, guys. These pedals don't need a fight. These pedals are lovers. Let's let them be lovers. So that's been this video. I'm sure there's going to be people in the comment section who have all kinds of problems with the way I did things or things I did or didn't do. But this video has been long enough, and I think I've covered what I wanted to show. If it gets enough clicks, if it gets enough, traction, I'll go through and do the same thing with the Vox and the Marshall setting on the Iridium. But the Fender side is really the side I use the most, and so that's what I felt was the good thing to start with. All right, thanks for watching. Please like, subscribe, dislike, leave me rude and nasty comments, support us on Patreon, blah, blah, blah. Buy a shirt, I don't know. Listen to the podcast, call your mom, write your congressman, and stay grounded. Bye, everybody.